Transform in silence. Rise unseen. What if your strength didn't come from being seen, but from becoming unshakable when no one's watching? What if every quiet step you took was already reshaping your destiny, louder than applause ever could? And what if your silence wasn't weakness, but the exact reason you rise while others remain distracted? In a world that constantly shouts for attention, true power grows in stillness. It doesn't need validation, it doesn't need applause. It only needs one thing: your commitment to inner growth, consistent, unwavering, and intentional. While the others perform, you prepare. While the world watches itself, you watch yourself. And when they notice the difference, it'll be too late to catch up, because you've already built the foundation they never saw being laid. Growth, like yours, doesn't announce itself. It whispers in the early hours and roars in the results. So let's begin. Silence also prepares you for something few are brave enough to confront: the weight of your own potential. You are capable of far more than you've allowed yourself to believe. Not because someone else has said so, but because your soul has always known. And deep down you do too. Silence reveals the gap between who you are and who you could be. Not to shame you, but to show you the path forward. Not to highlight your flaws, but to reignite your focus. Can you sit with that truth long enough to let it guide you? To let it soften you where you've grown rigid, and strengthen you where you've been soft? In silence, the masks fall away. You no longer need to pretend. You no longer need to posture. You no longer need to perform. Because what you're building is real. The world may celebrate noise, but greatness grows in stillness. And when you trust that process, when you commit to it day after day, without applause, without attention, something shifts. You no longer chase the spotlight. You become the light. You become someone who shows up when it's hard, who keeps going when it's quiet, who believes even when no one is watching. And that version of you, that's the one who makes the biggest difference. Not because they shouted, not because they showed off, but because they stayed rooted, because they stayed steady, because they stayed aligned. That is the power of silence. That is the essence of transformation. That is what it means to rise in unseen. And yet rising is only the beginning. To truly transform, we must not only grow upward, we must grow inward. Let us now explore the stillness that becomes the crucible of mastery, where the real work begins. Stillness as self-mastery. Silence does more than soothe. It sharpens. It turns distraction into direction, reaction into reflection, chaos into clarity. In this stillness you learn to hear not the noise of the world, but the wisdom of your own mind. You begin to recognize how often your peace was traded for approval, how your time was exchanged for validation, how your energy was scattered trying to be everything for everyone, but no more. Now you return to center, to a space within you that isn't influenced by algorithms or expectations, a space that is honest, steady, and sovereign. This is self-mastery, not control over others, but command over yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses. And in the Stoic tradition, this is the highest virtue, to act with reason, guided by values, not emotion, not ego. Each moment you hold your tongue, each urge you resist, each day you commit to growth, you deepen that mastery. You are no longer at the mercy of the external. You become unmoved, not because you're cold, but because you are rooted. You are kind, not because you seek praise, but because it aligns with your principles. That's the beauty of silence. It doesn't just make you peaceful, it makes you powerful, because you are no longer reacting. You are responding with awareness, with depth, with strength. And that, dear soul, is the quiet path of liberation. Not freedom from the world, but freedom from the parts of you that once gave it too much power. So breathe deeply, be still, and rise, not with noise, but with knowing. Because you are no longer becoming, you already are. Because after mastering your own stillness, a deeper awareness emerges, the ability to watch without needing to react. The space between stimulus and response is where true insight lives. Let's step into that space now. The quiet power of observation. In a world where speaking is glorified, few know the strength of watching. But in silence, you become an observer. Not just of others, but of yourself. You notice the triggers you used to react to. You recognize the moments your breath shortens, your tone sharpens, your focus drifts. You become aware of the subtle signals, the clenched jaw, the restless hand, the stories playing on loop in your mind. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. To observe without judgment, to witness without rushing to fix. And in this awareness, you grow. You begin to slow the moments that once sped past you. You give yourself room to choose again, more calmly, more wisely. You begin to understand the people around you, not through their words, but through their energy, their patterns, their pauses. You realize that many speak out of pain, not truth, that much of what is loud is not real, and that your greatest strength may be the space you create to feel before you act. In observation, you gain clarity. In clarity, you gain choice. And with choice, you reclaim your life. So choose to be still. Choose to see without needing to be seen. Choose to listen even when others shout, because the one who sees clearly moves deliberately, and the one who sees inward leads outward without even trying. And just beyond the still gaze of observation lies something even rarer, a strength that doesn't announce itself, but endures. The endurance of gentle strength. There is a strength that does not shout. It does not demand to be known or seen. It does not compete for space. It endures. It wakes up early and keeps promises no one will witness. It shows up in relationships with grace, even after being hurt. It listens without needing to reply and speaks with purpose, not performance. This strength does not break down doors. It opens hearts. It rebuilds from the inside. It chooses to heal again and again. And the world will often overlook this kind of power because it doesn't sell. But it sustains. It restores. It uplifts. You do not have to be fierce to be strong. You do not have to be loud to be heard. You only need to live in truth, breathe in integrity, and walk in silence that hums with courage. And when you do, your presence becomes a quiet revolution. A reminder that stillness is not absence. It is presence, deep, unwavering, radiant. Let this be your revolution, the one that begins within and flows outward in peace, the one that rises unseen, but unshakable, living the inner code. There is a code of honor that does not require medals, a dignity that does not beg for display. It's the internal compass that keeps you aligned, even when no one is checking. This is the inner code, the quiet ethic that shapes everything. How you speak when no one hears, how you act when there's no prize, how you treat others when there's nothing to gain. And this code becomes your compass. When life grows foggy, when emotions blur the way, this is what holds you steady. The Stoics knew this well, that excellence is not a performance but a practice. That virtue is not a badge, it's a way of life. To rise unseen is to honor this code, to hold your word sacred even in silence, to stay humble in success and noble in difficulty, to choose what is right over what is easy, again and again. This inner code may never trend, but it will carry you far. It will earn the trust of those who matter. And more importantly, it will earn your own self-respect. Because when all else fades, attention, status, approval, this is what remains. The quiet strength of a soul in integrity, and that is a life worth rising into. And once that quiet revolution, has taken root, something even deeper begins to take form. Not just how you move, but how you live. Let's now turn to the foundation of it all, the inner code that quietly governs a life of integrity. Unseen, yet unstoppable. There will be seasons when your efforts feel invisible, when your discipline goes unrecognized, when your kindness is met with indifference, when your sacrifices serve others but no one notices. But the Stoics would remind us, do not act for applause. Act in accordance with nature, with reason, with virtue. Because what is done in alignment with the good is already its own reward. What matters is not who sees your steps. What matters is that you keep stepping. Your unseen work is not wasted. It's woven into your character. It becomes your foundation when storms come. It builds a strength that is untouchable because it is internal. And when others finally ask, how did you become so calm, so focused, so steady? You'll smile gently, because the answer lives in every moment you chose silence over noise. Every time you walked the harder path without recognition, every time you honored your truth, even when it cost you praise. You don't need to be seen to matter. You just need to be true. Stay rooted. Keep rising, quietly, powerfully, without compromise. And sometimes, the greatest strength isn't in moving forward, but in standing your ground. Let's explore the quiet courage it takes to remain. The courage to remain. There is a quiet kind of courage in staying. Staying committed when progress feels slow. Staying kind when the world grows harsh. Staying focused when distractions multiply. In a world obsessed with speed, staying can feel like falling behind. But what if staying is the strongest thing you can do? What if the soul deepens, not by racing ahead, but by rooting down? What if mastery is less about climbing and more about staying grounded in who you are? The Stoics understood, endurance is nobility. To remain present in discomfort, to keep returning to your values when it would be easier to escape. This is not stagnation, this is strength, this is devotion. So stay with your practice, stay with your integrity, stay with your truth, even if no one sees it, especially when no one sees it, because staying is not standing still. It is standing strong, the strength of simple choices. Sometimes it's not the grand gestures that transform you. It's the small, consistent, private choices that stack up over time, like getting out of bed early to stretch when you'd rather stay warm under the covers, like writing your goals down in the dark before the world begins to demand your attention, like choosing a walk without your phone, just so you can hear your own thoughts again. These aren't dramatic moments. They're not shareable, but they are powerful. Consider the man who chooses not to argue in the meeting, even though he knows he's right, because he values peace over ego, or the woman who steps away from the gossip, not to be superior, but to protect her mental clarity. These decisions shape you. You don't need a crowd to applaud them. You just need to notice them, and keep repeating them. Over time, they build a kind of character that no challenge can shake. Not because you're lucky, but because you're disciplined, because you chose the harder thing over the easy one, when no one else was watching. And as you remain with this quiet devotion, a new question begins to stir, not how far you can go, but how deeply you can stay. Because sometimes the greatest strength is not in the reaching, but in the remaining. Let's now explore the courage it takes to stay. The weight you no longer carry. There is a heaviness that leaves when you stop performing for attention. When you no longer need to prove you're good enough, smart enough, worthy enough, you start showing up as you are, not to impress, but to express, not to be accepted, but to contribute. And in that space, healing begins. You begin forgiving yourself for the years you chased perfection, You begin releasing people who only stayed when you wore a mask. You begin honoring the truth that your worth is not earned. It's remembered, one choice at a time, one breath at a time. Like the man who quietly broke his addiction without ever announcing his struggle, or the woman who built her business from a corner of her kitchen while raising 2 kids with no praise, just perseverance. They didn't rise through spectacle. They rose through stillness. You can too, because silence doesn't mean you're invisible. It means you're intentional. It means your roots are deep. And your rise, though unseen, is inevitable. And as your quiet rise unfolds, you realize what truly transforms a life is not grand breakthroughs, but the sacred act of simply showing up, again and again. Let's enter that space where presence becomes power. The quiet miracle of showing up. There's power in simply showing up. Not perfectly, not loudly, but consistently, like the father who reads to his child every night, even after long hours of work. He's not posting about it, but he's building something unbreakable, or the young person who journals their fears and hopes by candlelight, trying to find clarity in a chaotic world. No one sees that page, but it's saving them. These quiet acts of showing up for yourself. For others, day after day, without praise, are miracles. You won't get a trophy for healing. No one will throw a parade when you choose to forgive someone who hurt you. But those moments shift something inside you. They build integrity. They reinforce resilience. They teach you to trust yourself. Not everything needs an audience. Some things are sacred because they happen in solitude. And perhaps the greatest growth is not what the world rewards, but what your soul remembers. So show up, again and again and again. Not because the world is watching, but because you are. Because who you become depends on it. Because in the aftermath of release, what remains is rhythm. The steady, soulful return to yourself. And that return doesn't demand perfection or recognition. It simply asks for presence. Let's now explore the quiet miracle of showing up. The discipline of the unseen path. There's a kind of power found in those who stay the course, quietly. Not because they seek recognition, but because they made a vow to themselves. Like the artist who paints every morning at dawn, knowing most of the world will never see her work. But still she creates, because it brings her closer to who she is, or the student who rewrites the same chapter 10 times, not for a grade, but for mastery. No praise, no spotlight, just relentless devotion to growth, or the caregiver who shows up for their elderly parent day after day. No applause, no social media stories, just love, just presence. There is discipline in this, not the rigid, punishing kind, but the sacred, self-respecting kind. It's the discipline of staying focused when distraction is tempting, of walking away from drama even when your name is in someone's mouth, of choosing nourishment over noise. This kind of discipline doesn't get headlines, but it builds heroes, not of the battlefield, but of the soul. Because every time you stay the course without being seen, you strengthen your spirit. And slowly that spirit becomes unshakable. Not because others believed in you, but because you chose to believe in yourself, in silence. But there's something else that takes root in this quiet rhythm, a force stronger than routine, deeper than habit. A kind of inner contract you make with yourself to keep walking the path, even when no one is clapping. Let's now explore the discipline of the unseen path, the echo that follows you. There's something that follows a person who lives with quiet conviction. It's not fame, it's not fanfare, it's an echo that lingers in the rooms you leave, because your presence was felt, not flaunted. An echo in the words of others, who repeat your calm without knowing they learned it from you. Think of the mentor who never shouted, but whose wisdom changed the way you see the world. Think of the friend who never judged, but always listened and made you feel safe to be seen. Think of the grandparent who rose early, worked humbly, and passed down strength without ever needing to call it power. They left echoes, and you will too, every time you choose to live with intention rather than impulse. Every time you lift someone without seeking credit, every time you speak truth gently or hold space for another without needing to fix them, you become a ripple that moves quietly but deeply, and long after your words fade, your example remains. That is the legacy of the unseen. That is the gift of the silent path. That is the echo of a life well lived. Because every silent step leaves a resonance. And when those steps are taken with integrity, they create something lasting. Something that lingers in hearts and spaces long after you've gone. Let's now explore the echo that follows you. Where grace meets grit, there's a rare kind of strength born at the intersection of grace and grit. It doesn't roar, it doesn't demand. It simply keeps going. It's the nurse on the night shift, calming a patient's fears with a quiet touch after a 12-hour shift. It's the teacher who stays late to help one more child understand without posting it online. It's the son who calls his mother every week, even when life is busy, because he remembers what matters. These acts don't earn medals, but they shape character. They show that gentleness isn't weakness, that quiet perseverance is more powerful than any proclamation. You don't need to broadcast your growth. The ones who need to feel it will, the ones who matter will know, and most importantly, you will know. You will walk differently, breathe differently, carry yourself with a deeper calm, because grit without grace becomes brittle, and grace without grit becomes fleeting. But together, they make you unstoppable, unshakable, and ultimately unforgettable in the most sacred way. You were not made to prove. You were made to live with purpose, quietly, fully, freely. But what happens when that strength is tested in silence? When no one claps, no one sees, yet you keep nurturing something beneath the surface. Let's step into that hidden soil, where the soul quietly grows, the garden you tend in the dark. The garden you tend in the dark. Every life has seasons. There are times when everything blooms with color, recognition, joy, progress. And then there are winters, quiet, unseen, and cold. But the garden doesn't die in winter. It gathers strength beneath the frost. Its roots go deeper. Its life retreats inward, not to give up, but to prepare. You too have those seasons. And when you do, remember, not every season is for showing. Some are for sowing. You may be tending the soil of your soul while the world keeps moving fast. You may be healing wounds you never named out loud. You may be starting over silently. This is sacred work. No one may notice, but the strength you build in these silent seasons will outlast any spotlight. Think of the young woman who overcame heartbreak without revenge, just reflection. The entrepreneur who kept building after every failed launch, alone in his tiny room night after night. The man who forgave his father, not in words, but in the way he chose to become a better one. This is the garden, quiet, humble, patient, and when spring comes, as it always does, you will not need to convince anyone of your growth. They will see it, but more importantly, you will feel it, because what you cultivated in the dark will now rise in the light, calm, grounded, and beautifully unseen. Because the truest growth often happens in the quiet seasons, when no one's watching, but everything within is changing. Let's discover the garden you tend in the dark, when silence becomes sanctuary. Eventually, the silence you once feared becomes the place you long for, not because you want to hide, but because you found peace in your own company. What used to feel like emptiness now feels like space, room to breathe, to feel, to just be. It's the morning cup of tea without scrolling, The evening walk with no destination. The pause before responding. The breath before reacting. You stop needing the world to echo your thoughts, because your own voice has grown strong. Not loud, but clear. Not proud, but true. This sanctuary isn't built with stone or walls. It's built with awareness, with presence, with the quiet confidence that you are enough even when no one affirms it. This is where your strength rests. This is where your healing deepens. And from this sanctuary you return to the world, not to perform but to live more fully. To speak only when your words carry weight. To act only when your soul is aligned. To give only when it flows from overflow, not obligation. In this place, you become unshakable. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because you no longer abandon yourself when it does. And in the stillness that follows, something unexpected happens. Not silence, but sanctuary. Not emptiness, but essence. Let's enter that sacred space where silence becomes your strength, the mountain within. There's a mountain inside you, not one to climb, but one to become. It doesn't rise with noise, but with patience. So it's shaped not by storms, but by your response to them. It's not conquered, but revealed. Every time you choose stillness over chaos, you lay another stone. Every time you respond with grace instead of anger, another layer rises. Every time you say no to what distracts and yes to what deepens, your summit grows taller. You may not feel it at first. There are no cheering crowds, no instant views, but something solid is forming within. Like the woman who walked away from a toxic relationship, not to prove a point, but to reclaim her peace. Like the man who started meditating at dawn, not to join a trend, but to find himself again. They are not climbing a visible peak. They are becoming the mountain. And when the time comes to stand tall in a world that sways, you won't have to. Try to be grounded. You'll already be the ground, unmoved, quiet, powerful. Not because you sought the spotlight, but because you built something no storm can shake. You didn't just rise, you became. But even within that grounded stillness, something deeper stirs. An enduring flame that doesn't seek the sky but warms the soul from within. Let's now uncover the fire that doesn't flicker. The fire that doesn't flicker. Not all fire burns bright. Some fires glow low, steady and constant, beneath the surface. This is the fire of purpose, the kind you don't shout about. The kind you tend quietly while no one else is looking. It's the writer who shows up to the page every day, even when the words come slowly. It's the athlete who trains before dawn, without music, without fanfare, only breath and focus. It's the survivor who chooses to love again, not with noise, but with fierce tenderness. This kind of fire won't flicker in the wind, because it wasn't lit by validation. It was born from truth. You carry this flame. You protect it through every setback, every silence, every moment you wonder if it's all worth it. And then one day, without announcement, it illuminates everything. Not for others, for you, but purpose alone doesn't complete the journey. It's what that quiet flame awakens within you, something steady, bold, and irreversible. Let's now step into the quiet revolution of becoming. The quiet revolution of becoming. Personal growth doesn't always look like breakthroughs or transformations. Sometimes it looks like tiny shifts repeated daily, until one day you realize you're no longer the same. You no longer shrink yourself in rooms that don't see your worth. You no longer rush to fill silences that used to make you uncomfortable. You no longer explain your boundaries. They simply are. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. It's not rebellion. It's clarity. Like the artist who paints what she feels, not what sells. Like the man who walks away from generational patterns, not with resentment, but with quiet resolve. Growth doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait to be applauded. It just continues. And when you live like this, when you heal without declaring it, when you change without proving it, when you love yourself without asking for approval, you become your own revolution, not loud, not flashy, but deeply rooted. A revolution that says, I choose peace over performance, I choose wholeness over hustle, I choose presence over proving, and every day you choose again, and every day you rise again, unseen but undeniable. So keep tending it, keep going, because while the world chases sparks, you are becoming the fire, so keep tending it, keep going, because while the world chases sparks, you are becoming the fire. The path of inner mastery, true personal growth, is not just about becoming better. It's about becoming deeper. Not just what you do, but how you hold what you do. Not just what you say, but the energy behind your silence. This path isn't paved. With milestones the world can measure. It's made of inner thresholds you quietly cross. The moment you stop reacting and start responding. The moment you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. The moment you catch your own self-sabotage in real time and choose differently. Growth at this level becomes less about seeking more and more about shedding what no longer serves. You strip away the masks of needing to be understood. You stop chasing people who reflect your old self. You outgrow the environments that once made you feel safe, but now keep you small. This isn't dramatic, it's deliberate. Like pruning a tree so it can grow stronger roots. Sometimes this means walking alone, not because you're lost, but because you're aligned. Sometimes it means being misunderstood, not because you're unclear, but because your truth no longer fits inside their comfort. And sometimes it means beginning again, with more clarity, with more quiet, with more reverence for the journey. That is yours alone. Because when you walk the path of inner mastery, you no longer fear who you were. You no longer chase who you could be. You simply honor who you are now. And in that space, you don't just evolve. You arrive. But once the quiet revolution begins within, the journey shifts. It's no longer about rising. It's about rooting. Let's now walk the path of inner mastery, the silent work of becoming whole. There's a part of personal development that no one teaches you, the quiet parts. The part where you choose integrity over image, where you keep a promise to yourself when no one would know if you broke it, where you sit in the silence of your room, not to escape the world, but to re-enter it more centered. This is the work that makes you whole. Not louder, not more liked, but deeply whole. You start to notice how much of your previous growth was performance, how much was proving instead of becoming. You let go of urgency. You stop racing toward outcomes and start respecting the process. It's the entrepreneur who pulls back to restructure their business, not to impress clients, but to honor sustainability. It's the parent who apologizes to their child, quietly, humbly, because healing generational patterns matters more than pride. It's the student who sets down their phone, not to meet a deadline, but to meet themselves. These are quiet victories. Invisible milestones, sacred steps towards self-trust. And one day, without needing a mirror, you realize you've become someone you respect, not for what you show, but for what you hold, because the deepest growth doesn't shout. It roots, it steadies, it waits, and from that still ground you rise, not for applause, but because it is time. But wholeness is not a destination, it's a discipline, a quiet daily devotion to truth, even when no one sees. Let's now explore the silent work of becoming whole. The stillness where real change begins. Some of the most transformative moments in your life will not be marked by fireworks or bold declarations. They will begin in the quiet. They will begin in a moment no one notices. When you finally decide, deeply and without ceremony, to live differently. It may look like choosing to respond with grace when someone tries to provoke you. It may feel like letting go of a dream, not because you failed, but because you outgrew it. It may sound like silence in a room where you once felt the need to explain yourself. In that stillness, something ancient wakes up within you. Something that doesn't need to be impressive, only honest. You begin to move slower but with greater power. You begin to speak less, but with greater truth. You begin to do less, but with more meaning. You find beauty in the ordinary. A cup of tea becomes a ceremony. A breath becomes a prayer. As walk alone becomes communion. And as you shed the layers of striving and proving, you begin to feel the lightness of simply being, not becoming more, but becoming real. This is not a regression, it's a return. Not a failure, it's a refinement. You are not shrinking, you are softening into strength. You are not fading, you are focusing. And in this state, no one may see you changing, but you will feel it, because the most lasting change is not the kind others notice. It's the kind you live. And from that stillness, a deeper invitation begins. To rise, not just to change, but to refine, not just to grow, but to become. Let's now meet the most excellent version of yourself. Becoming the most excellent version of yourself. There is a version of you that exists beyond comparison, beyond noise, beyond fear. A version sculpted not by the world's expectations, but by your own quiet choices, made every day without applause. This version of you isn't louder, it's clearer. It isn't more decorated, it's more disciplined. It isn't defined by achievement, but by alignment. You become that version not by striving harder, but by choosing better, by honoring your values even when they cost you comfort, by saying no to what flatters the ego and yes to what nourishes the soul. To become your most excellent self is not to chase perfection. It is to return again and again to what is true. It's waking up early to journal when no one's asking. It's holding your posture in a world that bends to convenience. It's learning to forgive, not to erase the past, but to free your future. This version of you doesn't emerge through external change alone. It's refined through silence, sharpened through solitude, strengthened by every invisible decision you make when no one is watching. And when you begin to live as this version, you start attracting clarity, not chaos, opportunities, not distractions, peace, not performance, because the world may not always reward quiet excellence, but your soul will. And in that reward, you'll find something more powerful than recognition. You'll find reverence for the life you're building, for the person you're becoming, for the path you've walked, in silence, with integrity, all along. But before the journey closes, there's one more truth to remember, one final shift that reframes everything. Perhaps you weren't chasing transformation. Perhaps you've been becoming all along. The closing note: you were becoming all along. Perhaps the most beautiful truth of all is this: you don't need to rush toward becoming, because in your quiet choices, your unseen disciplines, your private victories, you already are. You are already enough, already on the path, already becoming the person your younger self dreamed of. No performance required, no spotlight necessary, just devotion, just consistency, just the unwavering choice to keep showing up. So walk forward with grace. Carry yourself with gentleness. Let your inner excellence do the talking. And remember, not every transformation needs a witness. Some of the most powerful stories are lived in silence, but their legacy undeniable. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Perhaps the most beautiful truth of all is this: you don't need to rush toward becoming, because in your quiet choices, your unseen disciplines, your private victories, you already are. You are already enough. already on the path, already becoming the person your younger self dreamed of. No performance required, no spotlight necessary, just devotion, just consistency, just the unwavering choice to keep showing up. So walk forward with grace, carry yourself with gentleness, let your inner excellence do the talking, and remember, not every transformation needs a witness. Some of the most powerful stories are lived in silence, but their legacy, undeniable. Thank you for walking this path with intention. Now, continue it with purpose, with peace, and with power. If this message spoke to you, let it echo further. Like this video and subscribe to Stoic Havenway, where silence meets strength and where every quiet soul finds their rise. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of reflection, restoration, and personal evolution.